It was in the darkest period of the Japanese occupation of Singapore in the Second World War that the idea of a Union College for theological training for Singapore and the surrounding regions was sparked. Amidst the crucible of doom, death, and destruction, pastors and missionaries interned at Changi Prison agreed on a collaboration to establish a theological institution. This spark of light gave rise to the establishment of Trinity Theological College in 1948, with the attendant vision of Lux Mundi, light of the world. Through the years, TTC has grown to become an important center for equipping pastors and missionaries, as well as lay leaders and full-time staff of the churches, both in Singapore and in the wider geographical region. Following consultation with church and seminary leaders from Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia, mission partners and international institutions, Trinity Theological College established a Center for the Study of Christianity in Asia, CSCA, in 2001. The purpose of the center was to serve the churches in Asia in facilitating in-depth research in the identity and role of the church in the Asian context. The center sought to address three major questions. Who are the Christians living in Asia? What is our mission agenda? And thirdly, how can we be more effective in our God-given task of proclaiming the gospel in word, sign, and deed? The center was launched in July 2001 with the Reverend Dr. Hua Yong as its director and Reverend Dr. David Harley as associate director. The primary focus of CSCA was to facilitate research at the MTH and PhD levels of study, encouraging Asian scholars and church leaders to undertake postdoctoral research in areas that would facilitate the church in its mission tasks. Another essential development was the building up of library resources and archival material so that CSCA could become a valuable regional resource center. Dialogue with leaders from the University of Edinburgh for cooperation have been productive, and links with research centers in other parts of the world has also been established as part of a global network. When Dr. Hua Yong was elected as the Bishop of the Methodist Church in Malaysia in late 2004, the responsibilities of director were shouldered by the Reverend Dr. Michael Poon. A collaborative effort between Yale Divinity School Library, Hong Kong Baptist University Library, Prayak University Archives in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and Trinity Theological College was launched in 2006. Known as the Documentation of Christianity in Asia Consortium, the DCIA, the project is an example of inter-regional and institutional collaboration in documenting Christianity in an age of globalization. In 2008, three other seminaries joined the consortium, namely Malaysia Theological Seminary, Sabah Theological Seminary, and the Methodist Theological School in Cebu, Sarawak. This consortium was the first instance of inter-regional cooperation on documentation in East Asia, and such a model of collaboration opened up avenues for mutual understanding both with the region and the West. Michael Poon complemented Yale's policy and support towards strengthening documentation in centers, especially in East Asia, as visionary and exemplary. As such, TTC has been actively building up the library resources as well as archival materials. The collection in the TTC archives has grown with collaboration and contribution from such as the National Archives of Singapore, the Lee Kong Chian Reference Library of the National Library of Singapore, as well as the different denominational partners, including the Anglican Diocese of Singapore, the Presbyterian Church in Singapore, as well as the Methodist Archives of the Methodist Church in Singapore. Partnership and collaboration has enabled the TTC Library to enlarge our own archival collection, thereby facilitating academic research both within and without TTC, including the sociological and historical researchers from National University of Singapore and other universities. Through the years, a few of the notable publications of the Centre include the following. Published in 2012, The Clock Tower Story, The Beginnings of the Charismatic Renewals in Singapore, documents the beginnings of this charismatic renewal. The outpouring of the Spirit on some Anglo-Chinese school students in 1972 was indeed the beginning of this new work. It was arguably an unexpected and inexpressible gift from God to the newly independent nation. The details are, however, largely blurred or ignored or even forgotten by the close of that decade. What happened became part of the suppressed memory in Singapore's church history. The editors Malcolm Tan and Michael Poon relied on oral interviews and in a large part primary sources, the written testimonies of the key participants, in redressing this neglect. It is a significant historical account of the beginnings of a renewal movement that superseded the confines of denominationalism in Singapore. In 2013, together with Marek Ruskowski and John Roxburgh, Michael Poon, the director of the Centre, co-edited a volume, Mission, Memory and Communion, documenting world Christianity in the 21st century. This was a collection of articles written by 15 key interpreters of present-day Christianity from a wide spectrum of tradition, professional training, and experience across the globe. The main purpose was to examine documenting Christianity as an academic discipline and practice at the beginning of the third millennium. This collection of essays introduces the challenges and prospects of documenting missionary experiences. It is a reminder that the rich encounter between the gospel, its heralds and hearers in different cultures and nations for the past 2,000 years must not be lost nor forgotten. In the words of Emma Wildwood herself, she wrote, "This book is a guide and an inspiration for all interested in world Christianity. Its contributors ably demonstrate the variety of documentation and methods of collection and call persuasively for a sharing of memories and interpretations across the globe." One of the more significant contributions that the Centre at Trinity Theological College may be credited for is the facilitation and nurturing of Asian thinkers in recording and writing about different facets of what Peter Pan refers to as Asian Christianities. This is best exemplified in the 2014 publication of What Young Asian Theologians Are Thinking, as well as the 2015 publication of Handbook of Popular Spiritual Movements in Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia. Edited by Liao Ting What Young Asian Theologians Are Thinking is a collection of essays that lend voice to Asian theological ruminations on various scriptural texts and how they speak to the different Asian contexts, proposing ways of meaningful engagements of the Christian faith with the contributors' particular contexts. The 2015 publication of Handbook of Popular Spiritual Movements in Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia was intended as a reference for interpreting contemporary Christian life and practice through the contributions of over 40 local and international theologians, historians, theological educators, social scientists, artists, composers, as well as pastors. Their interpretive essays and case studies aid the sensing and understanding of the evolving movements that are shaping present-day Christianity all across Asia. Among the various papers that have been published, two deserve mention. The first is Peter Varney's monograph on Iban Anglicans, the Anglican Mission in Sarawak, 1848 to 1968, published in 2013. In detailing the encounter between Christianity and the Iban of Sarawak, Peter Varney meticulously charted Iban responses to Christianity from colonial rule to independence, showing how local catechists and teachers played a central role in bringing Christianity to their own people. This monograph is a valuable contribution to the interchange between faith and culture through the perspective of the local indigenous people. It is also important that these historical narratives are also retained and recounted in their respective native tongues. And this is best exemplified in a monograph by Malaysian Methodist pastor Liao Keming, which studies the history of the Chinese Methodist Church in the development of the Setiawan community during 1903 to 1940. The title is translated as The Parsonage and the Community Leadership, a case study of the power transition of the Setiawan Chinese Methodist Church. This monograph provided an interesting case study of the power structures between the lay and communal leadership and that of the Western missionary sodality. The work of the Center at Trinity Theological College has been an important catalyst in encouraging Asian theologians and missiologists to record, research, and to render their voices from this part of the world. Regrettably, the work of the Center has been halted in view of resource allocations. But the more significant task of encouraging and developing Asian scholarship remains. Besides publications and theological equipping, a significant endeavor that the college library continues to be involved in is the acquisition of publications, records, and archival materials. The hope is that this will in turn precipitate more rigorous scholarship. To date, the Trinity Theological College Library has a growing collection of 110,000 volumes, as well as archival material from the Association of Theological Education in Southeast Asia, also known as TISIA, Christian Conference in Asia, and also various personal records and recordings of Asian scholars. The collection is further enhanced by the oral history records and interviews held at the National Archives of Singapore, as well as the pertinent Methodist records held at the Methodist Archives of the Methodist Church in Singapore. To this end, Trinity Theological College seeks to play a part in the recording of global Christianity in this part of the world.